I guess it's an overarching thing of like, this feels like it shouldn't be the case anymore, but it 100% is.
Lauren, don't should yourself. Yeah, no, but I get it.
See you.
Oh my god, that was like a jump scare.
That was perfect.
I was writing a to-do list. Well, first of all, I was like checking the camera because I always do, because I'm vain. And I was like, it's okay that we don't record video because who says we have to do that? But then I thought, wait, we're professionals. And also, the podcast I was on this week that I'll talk about later, they do video, but they don't record the video.
Okay.
Or they don't do anything with the video. And at the end of our interview, one of the co-hosts was like, it was really good to see you talking in person and kind of, you can really see that person's like thought process and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I can turn it off if you want.
I was gonna say, if I had more warning, I'd be game. But I just happened to be scrolling through my Instagram, and of course, it gave me some random video, and it's someone being like, this is how I spent some of the last days with my dog, and...
Okay, you know what? Crazy. I got an email saying, Lauren commented on such and such post, and then it gave me a preview of the post, and it was about, like, a dog death, and I was like, holy shit, did something happen?
Oh.
Where the fuck is my mouse? Oh my god, it's right here.
But all that to say, yeah, so, she showed this video of her dog, and is like, coughing, it sounds like Pico, and so I, just spent like the last 5 minutes sobbing, so I don't want to be on video.
Well, I was going to say, the listeners would probably prefer if you show up post-sob,
Right.
But then I realized how insensitive that was. Trying to joke about everything.
What? Deflecting with humor?
That reminds me of the tagline that I have planned for today.
Oh, good. I forgot about taglines. I'm glad
ready?
you have one. Okay.
All right. Welcome. Well, hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where we sometimes aren't as serious as we should be because we've normalized our trauma through the use of humor.
Exactly.
I am Christina.
And I am Lauren.
So today is the long-awaited pickle poll results, answering a question we put out, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago?
At least 3.
At least 3 weeks ago. This is the longest time we've ever given y'all to answer one of these.
It's apparently good because it was the most difficult to answer.
I mean, one of the voicemails addresses that very thing, but yesterday we hadn't really gotten any responses, and I texted Lauren, I think our pickle poll is too serious because no one is answering and they've had weeks. And then right after that, we got just like a series of paragraphs and paragraphs, very serious. Someone wrote an entire essay.
I was gonna say, I've seen 2 responses at least, and they were worth waiting for.
They were worth waiting for. Oh my god, I can't talk. Where's my seltzer? Before we get into those complicated responses, Lauren, where are you at this week? What's going on?
I thought I had 2 things that I really wanted to talk about, but I only have one jotted down.
Amateur.
You know it.
No, we're professional.
I felt so prepared. I was like, I'm going to jot down what I'm going to say for where you at, so I actually remember. And now I just feel like I don't know how to start now that I'm looking at it.
When you went, I thought there was like a spider or something.
Ugh.
Because your apartment does have bugs.
Yeah.
You could talk about that.
The other day, just underneath my fucking bed, there was a big, like, full-size cricket just hanging out.
I like crickets, but only when they're outdoors.
Yeah, those don't freak me out as much as the spiders. I mentioned, and Christina saw, that there was this humongous one just hanging out in the center of my back door. So I'm like, not in the doorway. He was just on the door.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh my god. I didn't realize that part. That makes it even creepier. Because
Exactly.
it could bounce backward off the door.
Mm-hmm. And I have a rule. I do not kill them above eye level because of that reason, because I don't want them to somehow land on me.
Oh my god.
So this one I felt like I was like, yeah, but I got to get rid of it. It's skirting the rule. So I had to defocus my eyes and pretend like it was actually a bug that doesn't creep me out as much.
Trigger warning for bug death. Sorry, arachnid death.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm not, because I understand that it's a total irrational fear, but it is so strong that I'm just kind of like, that's all I can do.
It's a normal fear.
I know, but I seriously did for a split second, just, after I saw him on the door and I had to turn around and get something to smash, my first thought was actually like, do I just leave? Do I burn the place down? What? I mean,
oh, God.
I can never enter this building again.
That reminds me of the very first apartment I ever lived in on my own with a roommate in Austin. My first summer there was when I discovered the Texas roaches. They are gigantic. They are everywhere. I would find them not only inside plastic bags that they chew their way through, inside glass jars of pasta.
Oh my God.
Sorry, it was a Tupperware. I think they chewed through the Tupperware, dude.
Holy shit.
But yeah, that's been stressful.
Yes.
I'm sure.
And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, because it's always relevant, actually, a lot of the comments on this I feel like are going to be in line with our article writer.
I'm almost nervous about this conversation because I feel like it calls me out on so many things. We're going to get very vulnerable and it's going to be scary.
Yeah, but I mean, starting with this, because usually, we're recording on Friday nights and I get off from work. I'm done about like 4:10, 4:15. So in the time between, it's the most logical time for me to do some major grocery shopping for the week. So that's usually what I do in between. I always experience some form of grocery store panic. And I always want to talk about that because it's frustrating in a lot of ways, because first I beat myself up being like, you should be over this. Then I just kind of like sit there catatonic and stare at like I have my set things, of course, that I still get every week, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see something different and I feel like, yeah, I just kind of like stare at it to the point that someone's going to probably ask me like, are you okay?
Oh, same.
And then of course, after all that time, 9 times out of 10 at least, just decide nope and walk away, and that's easier. And the weirdest one that I realized today, when I'm walking out, like at least our grocery stores, they have some displays, and it's usually some kind of like snack food or something like that. I mean, they might even be, like in the door. They seem like the easiest way to steal something, basically.
Gotcha.
I look at those and there's always like that brief little thing that comes over me that's just, kind of like, I could just casually grab one, stick it in my cart, and I bet nobody would notice. You just pretend like you know what you're doing, don't make a fuss. And I always like consider it for like a split second, because it usually is like snack food, junk food, things that I've stared at in an aisle for an hour earlier and not gotten. And somehow it feels like it would be okay if I didn't pay for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't feel bad when corporations lose money.
True.
Have you ever shoplifted before?
I think a couple of very small things. Yeah. I think like in ways that I could kind of justify it to myself.
Of course.
Like I know I once lifted 2 eyeliner pencils because I was in the self-checkout and they were on the weighted side. So they wouldn't add any weight. So at the end I was like, black eyeliner, I use that all the time. I just stuck them in my bag.
I feel like I've done that before too, or thought about doing it, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of denial, when I was an alcoholic in Seattle, and also my bulimia was worse than it ever was at that time, I used to shoplift a lot of food, like binge foods.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you were saying earlier. You don't want to pay for the thing. Like you'll look at it forever and then put it back. Like I walk around sometimes with it in my basket, then I put it back. It's shameful, but it's different if you're not paying for it.
Yeah, because like the thing that got me is...
Don't do this, kids.
It's because I've heard of people, saying like what you did about the shoplifting binge food and stuff like that. And I realized like it's not just that, but if I paid for something like that and then I'd get it home and I'd still have to be like, oh, I don't know. Do you really deserve this? And is this gonna, like mess everything up and make you unhappy with yourself? And, you've just been doing the same set thing and staying the same and you're okay with that, but extra's not okay. But if I just stole it, basically, then it feels like none of those questions would be there. It'd just be like, this is that thing I just picked up for free.
That sounds like a money issue with deep-rooted emotions attached to it. Like,
that could be. Because it's not like I can't afford it now, but yeah, all of the past of not being able to afford things. That makes a lot of sense.
Well, and also, if I don't spend money on myself, I don't have to feel guilty.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I feel so guilty when anyone spends money on me, and when I spend money on myself. It's like a moral shortcoming.
Yes.
I'm banned from Whole Foods.
Self-banned, or they actually banned?
They actually caught me and banned me. I'll tell that story another time. But yeah, I was in so much denial because I am not the kind of person who does that. And I couldn't see how dangerous it was that I was doing these risky behaviors. I did a lot of risky behaviors back then. And I just thought everything was normal. Like, I'm miserable, but I've always been miserable, you know?
Yeah. I don't know how to kind of like wrap that story up.
Oh, the panic at the grocery store that you usually have before you record.
I guess it's an overarching thing of like, this feels like it shouldn't be the case anymore, but it 100% is.
Lauren, don't should yourself. Yeah, no, but I get it 100%. There's a lot of stuff I do now that I'm really embarrassed about because I'm like, well, this is kind of dark, but like self-harm was one of those things. I relapsed this year while I was drinking, and I was like, this is so stupid. You shouldn't be doing this anymore. This is like a kid thing. And that's a dramatic example, but there's also like, you know, like going to the grocery store, getting weighed at the doctor. It's like, why is this such a big deal? I'm expecting it. I've done it before.
Yeah.
It's just like your body storing trauma, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of frustrating.
Well, that makes me proud of you for like showing up and putting on a show every Friday after going through that.
Yeah, I've usually forgotten about it by then is the thing.
Well, yeah, I was going to say also mad at you for never mentioning it.
Yeah, it's like on the drive home, I feel it must be like where all that panic dissipates because once I'm out of there, it must be fast. Because by the time I get here, I was like, I was going to say that and I totally forgot.
Well, you said it now.
So where are you at?
Well, I actually do have some notes because I feel like so much happened this week. I told my therapist it feels like 3 weeks have passed and not one because so much has happened. I guess I'll get the eating disorder stuff out of the way. I am on an increased dose of Wellbutrin and it's taken away my appetite. And that has been shockingly triggering. It's one of those things that I'm really struggling with. And I'm not really fighting it either. I'm just kind of like accepting it. Some of our listener responses actually go into this, but I guess I've been in denial about the chronic nature of my eating disorder or like...
Yeah, I know one of the responses I'm thinking of. Like, yeah, that felt like daggers to me too. So both of us are going to feel called out. But
I've been practicing harm reduction. And speaking of which, I attended a free naloxone training program that was hosted by a local harm reduction organization. Shout out Hampton Roads Harm Reduction. Woo! But yeah, it was so cool. It was like 15 people and we packaged up a bunch of safe injection kits. So like there's a long bag and you put 2 syringes and 2 little vials of naloxone in there. And we packaged up like hundreds of them. Then they showed us how to use it. They showed us how to stop the bleed, like tourniquets and stuff. They talked about rescue breathing. And it was just like, I felt so comfortable because I go to a lot of like queer/activist events around here, and I don't always feel comfortable.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, but I just instantly felt like these people get me. This is something I want to be a part of.
That's very cool. And also a good thing to learn.
Well, exactly. All that to say, I am getting coffee with one of the organizers next week.
Oh, awesome.
I really want to do a similar event, but for eating disorder harm reduction, because nobody talks about it.
Right.
It's like you're either recovered or you're sick.
Yeah. And I feel like it's very few and far between to find professionals that would agree to that.
Exactly.
They're usually just like, no, full recovery is possible. What if it's not?
Harm reduction saves more lives than treatment centers do. Hot take. But yeah, I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about is that I was on another podcast this week, The Unfocused Writer. Mm-hmm. It was the first time I talked specifically about my writing and not so much like my mental health or the podcast, although I talked about those a lot. And they wished you were there too.
I know.
We'll do another appearance soon.
Okay.
But yeah, it comes out on the 30th. Just fucking search The Unfocused Writer.
The day after ours. Can be like a double feature.
That's another thing I wanted to mention in housekeeping. Let's just do housekeeping now. Our release schedule is changing slightly. I don't know if y'all noticed, but the episodes have been coming out later on Mondays, and that's because I work on the weekends and I just don't have time sometimes, and it's a lot of stress for me. And so starting next week, we will start releasing on Tuesdays instead of Mondays. I'll give you 1 week warning. It literally doesn't matter. Oh, another housekeeping thing is we didn't get any responses last time we shouted out for guests.
I know. I feel like we've tried a couple times now. I feel like you're ignoring us.
I feel like people are scared, and that's valid. But
also, we're not scary.
Well, maybe to some people.
I would love it if people thought I was scary. Just because it's nothing that I would ever imagine for myself. I think I'd get a kick out of it. Tell me if you think I'm scary, guys.
I don't think you're scary at all. Sorry.
I know.
I think I keep stalling because this is going to be really heavy. So 3 weeks ago, we asked the question, what are you in denial about? And what would it take to get you to a place of acceptance? And like we said, we got an onslaught of sudden responses in the last few days. And so I was thinking we could start out with the voicemail.
Okay.
Because you haven't heard that. And also, I want people to send more voicemails. So maybe if we play it first, it's like
tricky girl.
I don't know. Okay, here it is.
Hi, Lauren and Christina. First off, I want to say thank you for giving all of us extra time to answer this pickle poll. I have not mentally been in a great space, and I've really wanted to respond to this, but I think I had to kind of get out of that negative headspace, which I'm still kind of pulling out of, to be able to even consider how to answer this without having that negativity really impact my answer. But ultimately, I think what it comes down to is, in my perception, I think that denial versus acceptance and reaching that acceptance is different for every person. I think that every person requires different elements to be able to get to that point of acceptance, to get through that denial. And I also think that it depends on the situation. There are some things that in my life I am probably in denial about. I think I'm aware of some of it, but maybe not the overall impact or big picture. Maybe I am aware of it and my heart is not allowing me to accept it or doesn't want to accept it. So I think that ultimately it kind of depends on the situation and the person and kind of where they're at, right? Like I was kind of in denial about being able to answer this pickle poll in the right way because, like I said, I've not been in a great headspace, and I probably recorded 5 or 6 different attempts at responding to this, and I kept thinking I was able to answer this in a clear mind, and I'd listen to them back, and like, what am I doing? I can't speak this out because it's not truly how I feel. And I kind of like, I had to go through that, right? Like those were my elements. I had to go through listening to the playback of how ridiculous I sounded, or at least ridiculous to me, because in my mind, I know that that's not truly how I felt. Just in that moment, I was like, fuck this, fuck that, fuck everything. And if I don't want to accept something, I don't have to, because that's my goddamn right. And that's not the mature or appropriate response that I truly wanted to give. So again, I think it really just kind of depends on the person and the situation. But ultimately, I really think it comes down to being able to break down those barriers to accept what is truly preventing you from getting to that stage of acceptance. And yeah, I think it really just comes down to breaking down those barriers, and I think it looks different for each given situation and individual. Sometimes I need to hear the playback. Sometimes I need to talk it out with myself or write it down or have a counseling appointment or, lose 3 or 4 nights of sleep over it to kind of start being able to shove things aside. I also apologize. I know I've already stated that I've not mentally been in a great space, and so I feel pretty scattered in this. I've also never recorded multiple speak pipes for you to piece together, and so I apologize if that's creating extra work for you. But that's kind of where I'm at this week, last couple weeks, I suppose. Maybe I'm trying to break down my barriers and kind of accept and be aware of what's kind of causing me to feel like this and to be able to kind of accept that, to accept that whatever these things are that's causing me to be in this shaky headspace, to be able to say, all right, this is my mental health and I'm just struggling with my depression again. And maybe that's what I need to accept. But I hope that y'all have a great weekend, and I intend to catch up on the pod this weekend. I see the movie review and I can't wait to listen to it.
Thank you so much, Jess. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
It also got very real.
Yeah, like I feel like I don't know where to start. I don't know, there weren't like talking points I could pick out, but it also felt like she just was narrating my brain.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Well, at the beginning, Jess, you focused a lot about how negative you were being and how scatterbrained you are. And the whole time I was thinking, stop that. It's fine. But then at the end, you were like, maybe that's what I need to accept, that this is just how I am right now. This is just my mental health. And sometimes you do have to lose 3 nights of sleep over it and just let it ride its course. And talking about it is personally the only way I've been able to find relief during those times. And the fact that Jess, you showed up and you just like talked your way through it. Like we just heard you talk your way through it.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
That was witness to it. And the other thing that I really picked up on was like right from the beginning. And I feel like this is going to like weigh into other kind of amorphous thoughts that I had about other responses. But
Perfect.
The idea of awareness versus denial and acceptance. Awareness and acceptance are not the same thing. But I feel like sometimes we try and convince ourselves they are so that we can feel like we have accepted something. It's like, well, no, I know this is a problem. So there we go. I've done the work. It's like, well, you started to.
What would you say is the difference? Because like acceptance, I guess it's a loaded word for me still, even after talking about it for 2 episodes, because I feel like it's kind of a cop-out, like kind of the same thing as what you just described. And so I guess I'm wanting to differentiate a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So if acceptance doesn't mean saying, okay, I have a problem, like what else?
Well, I was thinking about this because I feel, particularly with like the eating disorder history, I've lived in this world a lot where I could just be like, yes, I know there is a problem, not pretending like there isn't. I know that I don't necessarily want this to be how the rest of my life goes. And those 2 things are true. So I'm done.
That's awareness.
Exactly.
Okay. And so what does acceptance look like in your life as opposed to
So I guess,
that?
I mean, you know, maybe acceptance isn't the best word, but I feel like, yeah, moving towards the difference is knowing those 2 things and working through like, okay, so if both these things are true, what am I willing to do about that? What do I know might come? How might I deal with that? What am I not willing to do? You know?
Yeah, that's a part of acceptance too.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with awareness, you're just kind of like putting that off.
Yeah, I feel like in the beginning you convince yourself because it's like, I've admitted I have a problem. Woohoo, gold star.
Do you have an example from your life since we're trying to tell more personal stories on here?
I don't, but I swear there's personal stories coming.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jess, for that voicemail. Moving on, do you want to do the Peach comments first, or do you want to do...
Yeah, because I just had those up. I just got to pull it right back
Okay,
up.
perfect. Do you want to read the first one?
Yes. Okay. This is at Svelte Dream, and she says, I think I'm in denial about the fact that I might always be mentally ill. Like I'm pretty high functioning thanks to access to good mental health care and my issues being responsive to the therapeutic options we have available. But I guess I always envisioned one day being cured, and I'm slowly realizing that might not be how this works. Also, I'm probably not temporarily at a higher weight. This might just be the weight now, unless I relapse. This one is the real one I'm in denial about. Oh, I forgot to say what it would take to get to a place of acceptance. For the first, I guess acceptance requires me to envision my future self as not necessarily doing better than I am now. Like maybe she doesn't have her life any more together than I do right now, and maybe that's okay.
Oh my God.
And for the second, it probably means finding peace with my body how it looks now, which I don't see happening. I feel that.
Yeah, I felt every part of that. Let's talk about the first point first, which is that she's in denial about the fact that she always might be mentally ill.
Yeah.
I mean, I just went through this with my disability journey, accepting that this just might be my condition and that if I don't try to get help, it'll just keep getting worse.
Yeah.
That was a really tough pill to swallow because, yeah, like I also thought that eventually I would recover.
Yeah.
Like this is all temporary, even though history shows that it's not. And also, I like how she says maybe the you in the future doesn't have it more together than you do now, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think I've shared this on the pod before, but one of my journals from when I was, I don't know, like 20, 21, something like that, I was writing about like some eating disorder behavior I was engaging in and, and it wasn't going so well and I wasn't happy about it. And I ended it with, it's not like I'll be doing this when I'm 30.
Oh my God, yeah, I remember you saying that, and it makes me just as sad now as it did when I heard that.
It made me more sad when I saw that, like, in my 40s. Like, I don't know why I magically thought at 30 I would be done, but that...
I mean, it's a widespread stigma that you just don't suffer with eating disorders when you're older. But guess what? We've both been in treatment with people that are older than us.
People that are grandmas.
Exactly. I've been in treatment with multiple grandmas.
Me too. And also, I could picture feeling the same way about like depression and being in like a really low point, or anxiety being like intolerable, and just thinking, I just got to grit my teeth and get through it because like surely no one lives like this forever. Yeah. And then it's like, they could.
An analogy to that is COVID, because we all thought it would be over by 2021,
I mean, earlier than that, we thought it'd be over in 6 weeks.
And and then we kept being hopeful and we kept being hopeful. And I think today I'm finally accepting that like it's just part of our world now and I need to take the precautions I can. And that sucks. It sucks so bad. And it is the same with depression. Like once you realize it's very bleak, it's like, I don't want to keep having to do this stuff forever.
Right.
I don't want to mask forever. I don't want to take my meds forever. Like,
Agreed.
So bleak. It's so bleak. But also, we are taking care of ourselves by doing those things. And that is something to be proud of. And
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I felt the same way. And this is why I should also get myself a therapist again, because it's possible I should try medication again. Maybe one time it'll help. But there's been a few things that have like felt like they've helped me a little bit. And, so even that much is a relief. But then, like you said, it's when you think about like, but is there going to be a time when I don't need it anymore, right?
When we're dead, maybe.
True.
Sorry, joking again.
But it's like, this won't be forever. And I don't know, some of it I feel like is because we, especially in our growing up time, I feel like there was more stuff. It's like, we'll just give you an antibiotic for that. So you think like, I take it for 2 weeks and depression is gone.
Yeah, it's very linear.
Yeah.
Linear. The other thing she talked about, accepting that the weight she's at now is like might be her forever weight. That triggered a few different thoughts for me. Because on one hand, I think everyone fluctuates a lot throughout their life, disordered or not. And I don't know if I agree with the idea of like forever weight. But also there's the concept of your set point.
Yeah, and I thought of it more as the idea that, like if you're unhappy with your current size, but you keep telling yourself, but someday I'm going to get back to, what I was when I was 20, when I was 16, whatever.
Yeah, I really am in denial about that because, I mean, I'm not going to mention numbers, but I've been like underweight technically for a long time now. And when I look at old pictures of me as like a teenager when I was healthy, I don't want to go back to that. And I'm kind of ashamed of that because on one hand, I'm on the podcast talking about like body acceptance. And then on the other hand, I'm like, I can't gain weight because then I won't feel like myself. And I am in denial that like eventually I will have to do that. But also, what if I am eating disordered forever and this is just like me now? And that's sad too. They're both scary.
Yeah. And something that I feel like for me, and that topic works kind of, I don't know, 2 ways, is at the age I'm at. I mean, literally like a month after I turned 44, I kept hearing about some study that came out like this fall that was all like, there's 2 ages where people significantly age and feel it. And one is 60 and one is 44. I'm like, it was probably not even a full month after my birthday. And I heard that and I was like, thanks, guys. Happy birthday to me.
I mean, with my parents, it's so true. They changed like a lot when they turned 60.
But that to say, yeah, so in relation to the body thing, though, is then, yeah, like that is something that I think of now is it scares me that I'm getting older to the point where I might try the same things to manipulate my body size and they won't do what they used to.
Oh my God, yeah. And the reason a lot of us started manipulating our body when we were younger is because of puberty.
Yep.
Yeah. Like for me, definitely. I didn't want boobs. I still don't want boobs.
No, I never have.
But yeah, I never thought of that. Eating disorder is triggered by like aging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bet that's a thing. We have a lot of people in that age range who listen.
Yeah, I can't say personally, but I remember at least reading like one magazine article about that. So...
yeah, I know we have at least one listener who's older and has an eating disorder. Whatever older means, that's right. Rude. But I mean,
there literally, is a point where your body stops, like working the same way it did when it was young. So, yeah, at that age, whatever it happens to be for you.
Also, I think we're in denial that we're aging at all.
Yeah, I definitely am.
Okay, the next comment is from Starfarts with a Z at the end.
Best name.
I am definitely in denial about how real my ED actually is. Looking back, in high school, I felt like a fraud, even though I would fast all day at school, then binge and purge all afternoon, and then exercise in my room every night, and cry and feel so defeated that I couldn't fast for days on end like the girlies on Eating Disorder Forum. And I wasn't a quote-unquote real anorexic. As I got older, I felt like I grew out of it because I wasn't engaging in the same behaviors. But they were just changing with me. I would drive around to several fast food places and order food, then go home or hide in a busy parking lot and binge, then go home to spend the evening purging, but now with electrolytes. Harm reduction.
Exactly.
Then I decided that I didn't want to live that way and I should focus on being healthy instead. Ever so slowly, that morphed into an obsession with health and wellness, still focusing on my body and how I needed to improve it. Looking back, COVID was probably my deepest into my ED. Seeing pictures of myself, I looked so sick. I was eating only fresh fruit most days, vegan, and exercising twice a day. I was my lowest adult weight and still so critical of my body. The depression from that and my abusive relationship just fed into each other constantly. I moved, broke up with the person I was with, hated my new schedule, didn't renew, I don't know if I'm going to put all this. She talks about changes in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those is gaining weight. And that kind of prompted her to go to the gym again. The little rules and habits and health anxiety crept back in. Despite feeling like I have always lived on the periphery of an eating disorder, I realized not long ago that I really and truly do have one and always will. I have had this demon inside me since I was at least 7 years old, and feeling shame at my body in a crop top and guilt for eating buttered toast. I am so beyond fucked up, and so are my sisters in their own ways. And I don't know why. And it's because I'm also in denial about taking an honest look at my childhood and my family. I'm in denial about the anger and disappointment that I feel because I believe my parents did not do a very good job. I'm in denial about the fact that they were young and had their own obstacles and did their best, even if it was not good at all. I'm in denial about who they actually are, and it makes me so afraid of who or what that might make me. I'm definitely in denial about how badly I need therapy to process all this.
Called out.
At the end of the day, some of my greatest strengths are my resilience and my capacity for denial. Otherwise, I have no idea how I would function. I push it down and just keep swimming. Don't look back. Don't look under. Keep moving, and I can stay ahead of it all. Keep climbing, and one day I'll find what I'm looking for, even though I'm not sure what that really is. Keep smiling, and I won't know there are any other feelings that are trying to be felt.
Whew, well,
oh my
crap.
God.
I wish I had read this one earlier because there's a lot going on.
Well, look, there's something to be said for in-the-moment reactions.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually been trying not to read stuff ahead of time as much lately because I like it to be fresh.
I just feel like I'm going to miss all I want to talk about. That's how I feel.
Well, that's fair. But yeah, we were just talking about, I mean, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, how we never feel like our eating disorders were ever like that bad.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about the first time that I went to treatment. I was 35 and it was a shock that it even would have been suggested to me at that point. And I felt like a total fraud when I got there. I can at least like objectively look back and be like, you're not in a good space.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what episode it is, but I read the fucking journal entry that was basically about like what I was going through at that time. And I believe I said it reads like a horror story to me today.
Oh, the one about laxatives? Yeah. Your worst day? Mm-hmm. Ooh, yeah, that was a good one.
But the fact that then, I was still telling myself, I'm like, but you're just kind of like dabbling and being like, it's kind of funny to pretend like I have an eating disorder.
Oh my God, yeah, I still feel like that. I was just telling my therapist the consequences, like all of the repercussions are finally catching up to me, like physical ones at least. And it sucks, but I'm still in denial.
Yeah.
And also the fact that you went to treatment multiple times and you're still in denial. Nowhere in the message from Starfarts did they mention that they went to treatment. And yet when I read it, I almost felt like, should I be reading this? This is so like awful.
Yeah.
Like you really and truly did/do have an eating disorder.
And it was clear, and probably, to some degree still is, clearly hell.
And that's another problem I have with like treatment and the eating disorder field right now is that like it's very difficult to go to treatment, to not just to be accepted, but to pay for it.
More to pay for it than to be accepted. They'll take your money.
Exactly. Most people with eating disorders don't even go to treatment. And so how many people are out there that, like for every one person that goes to treatment, I bet there's like 9 people that didn't.
At least, I would think. If anything, that's undercutting it.
It's interesting how she talks about the morphing of her eating disorder over time.
Yeah.
And it is easier to be in denial when it changes shape and doesn't always feel the same.
True, because like if one like particular behavior you're struggling with is the focus, then you get to tell yourself, but at least I'm not doing that. It's like, congratulations, it's been so long since I've done this, and pretending like you're not doing other things to harm yourself.
But like, at least she's practicing harm reduction.
Yeah. Maybe after you teach your class, we need another harm reduction episode.
Totally. Oh my God. Yeah, I have so much to say about it, even more now.
I imagine.
Okay, let's talk about the part where she talks about being in denial about taking an honest look at my childhood and my family.
Yeah, because I think both of us had a big reaction to that.
Yeah, she said, I'm in denial about the anger and disappointment I feel because I believe my parents did not do a very good job.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I love my parents, but, and they love me too, I know that. But man,
yeah,
I didn't really accept that I had been traumatized by the way I grew up until like the last 8 years, I want to say, in the last 6 years, because our family loved each other. And so like,
exactly.
They were just doing what's best, which is also something I've had to accept, that my parents are their own people and that they were just doing the best they could at the time. That doesn't excuse them.
Exactly. It's so hard to, like get those two to work together in your brain, because I do feel like I have come to a point, I mean, I feel like I've mentioned things here that I talk about like my parents doing and realizing like they were so young at that point. I can't believe that they even
yours especially. It was like high school.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't even believe, like they got through that. When I'm thinking about like, this is an example of shitty parenting. But then I try to say, but they were so young and they're trying to do what they could. And sometimes I worry, I feel like I'm saying that just to kind of like justify to myself. So I'm saying like, that's why it's okay that they were a shitty parent. But it's more like what you said. They were doing the best they can. It was a shitty parenting move.
Exactly. And I'm not like saying I could do better. Like, that's why I'm not having kids. I would probably be a terrible parent and pass on a lot of shit. That's another thing. There's a lot of generational trauma that gets passed down. I'm really interested in learning more about that, because I'm also starting to accept that that's kind of what is happening in our family.
Yeah.
Like, I keep uncovering more and more things, and I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. But yeah, there's still a lot of denial.
Yeah. I feel like when I started to talk about things with my parents and how they raised me, the first thing that I would always had to be sure to say is like, I never felt like my parents didn't love me. And that's true, but I felt like I had to first defend them before I can say something bad.
I'm in denial about my anger. I was writing about it today, actually. It was based on a conversation I had with my therapist where I was just complaining about like how unfair it was that I was parentified and all this stuff. and I want like credit for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I sound like a brat. She's like, no, that's not fair. And you should be angry. And just hearing that like made me cry. I was like, I do need to be angry. Like, I need to accept that I am angry.
Yeah, like, it's okay to be angry about it. It doesn't mean that you don't love your family.
Exactly.
It just means you're angry.
We're in denial that anger is even a healthy emotion or can be.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think that's all I have to say about that comment. It just really made me feel a lot of things, and I will be thinking about this for a long time. Oh my God, I feel like I need a sip of water. Oh, I'm out of seltzer. Whatever, we're almost done.
Okay.
So the last response we got, like I said, is a literal essay.
Yes.
So this was actually one of the co-hosts of the writing podcast I was on, Kiki Walter. Well, her name's Christy, but her writing name is Kiki. Hold on, I'm pulling it up. I had it pulled up before. Where did it go? Oh, I was prepared. It took me forever to get used to Substack. It's so hard, like confusing.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to start writing on there as well, but I haven't taken the time to really figure it out.
Next time I see you, if you haven't done it by then, I'll like help you.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you'd hurt me. Like, next time I see you, if you haven't done it by then, I'm going to like punch you in the arm.
I mean, no, because I'm a professional.
That's right.
Okay, so anyway, she's an amazing writer, and she's actually done a lot of mental health writing work. And so it was such a lovely surprise to log into Substack and see a new essay from her where she mentions our podcast and answers our question. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to cover the highlights. So first of all, what are you in denial about? She says, well, Jesus, what aren't I in denial about? And the first thing that comes to her mind is my recovery. And I'll read this next part. A couple of years ago, I participated in an IOP for my mental health, depression, to be more specific. Simultaneously, I quit drinking. Substance use wasn't why I went to treatment, but I thought it was a good time to go all in. I have been open about my mental health issues for a long time now. Even still, there are times when I completely bury the fact that depression is something that forever looms over me no matter how much therapy I get. That goes along with our last responses too. I'm really in denial about my sobriety because I just want to be normal. And then she lists 3 things that she's in denial about. I have a very difficult time acknowledging the fact that my drinking may have been problematic. I have a very difficult time telling others, admitting to others that I don't drink. And then the third one is I have not done the work.
Yeah.
So I can relate to a lot of this. I mean, I think by now we've accepted that some of our behaviors are problematic.
Right.
I mean, like you said last time, I was in denial about the Benadryl being problematic for a long time. I mean, especially when you're going through it and you're trying to convince yourself that you don't need help, like that's when the denial is at the strongest.
Yeah.
But even after that, when you look back, you kind of romanticize it and you're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Was it really a problem?
Yeah. When we had that discussion before, that's when I also mentioned, which comes into play reading this article, that when something gets marginally better, then sometimes it feels like you can grasp onto that and then just like flip that all the way around and convince yourself that means nothing is a problem.
Totally. And I think she talks about it on the Unfocused Writer, but...
Because that was particularly when she was talking about depression. Like, I have that, she wrote, why do I sleep the days all away? And I wrote, could it be depression?
No, she literally talks about sleeping the days away.
Yeah.
Because of her depression, and then just saying, I'm fine.
But yeah, and that's what I thought of, is it's like, well, yeah, because you probably are thinking of the worst days in your depression, and it's like, well, it's not like that, so the depression must be better. Weird that I sleep all day.
Yeah. And she also talks about going back to acknowledging that drinking may have been problematic for her. Like, I know her story, and like I said, she kind of became sober almost by accident. And so it's really hard for her to tell people that she doesn't drink. And she writes about having all of these excuses she uses that are socially acceptable. But the hardest thing of all is to just say, I had a problem. Like, even to herself, it's hard.
That made me think, because I wrote something about that too, saying like pretending to drink to be quote unquote normal. And it immediately pulled up reminding myself of like more recently talking to, like a dietitian and being able to tell her like, hey, I have a decent breakfast every single morning now. And it's like, yes, it's the exact same thing, and I'd freak out if it wasn't the exact same thing, and I probably wouldn't do it if I didn't have the exact same thing available. But won't tell her that, won't tell her all the thoughts while it's happening. Just, look, shiny thing, I have good breakfast. Distraction! Whee!
Yeah. I mean, but even if it's the same thing, it still could be a good breakfast. It just sucks that like they hear that, and rather than say, oh, that's progress, they're like, no, you should be having variety. You should be challenging yourself all the time. Like, what if you don't?
But yeah.
Like, what if you don't?
But I feel like focusing on those things is, yeah, just kind of the same thing as being like, I'll pretend like I'm drinking so people don't realize I'm not. It's just kind of like, I'll show you something that you can outwardly see is great, so I can pretend like my mind is not a fucking mess about it every day.
Yeah, it's like people that go to treatment for their eating disorder and they come back and they gained weight and everyone thinks everything is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you don't really do the work, and that's the third thing on her list, is that she's in denial that she hasn't done the work, which I think is how she meant to say that. And I immediately thought of you, because 2 weeks ago when we were telling each other what we thought the other was in denial about, I was like, you're actually like doing a really good job. You're doing a lot of work, and I think you're in denial about that. What are your thoughts? Am I onto something, or is that bullshit?
I mean, that might be the same thing where I immediately felt guilty, as in, like, I think I'm portraying something better than it is, because, again, it's kind of like the actions are there, but none of the thoughts are.
Okay, but when I tell you that you're doing a lot of work, it's not like hearing that from someone who doesn't know you.
Right.
Like when I consider the things you're doing to be good work, even though I know that you're still thinking the thoughts, you're still doing better, and like you might have the thoughts forever. That's okay too.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference how I'd react too. Like with if somebody else like didn't really know me would say that, then I would just, you sit there and do the evil villain laugh, and it's like, haha, my mask is working.
Did you ever respond to that message that you were talking about, where someone said they look up to you, and you were like, I don't know how to respond? Oh, Lauren, that was like 2 weeks ago.
Well, I know, but that person is actually in treatment now. And
no.
So that's why it's taken longer, because I have the address and I need to write a physical letter.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Oh my God. Now I feel bad. Okay, I'll just read the last part where she says, what would it take to get me to a place of acceptance? So for her, continuing to write about it helps. It helps me put my mind right, and my writing is where I'm the most honest. I can't help but to spew the down and dirty truth out in my words. I'm also seeking out the words of others. It's helpful to know that I'm not alone. Most of all, I think looking straight ahead and keeping myself balanced as best I can will help me get there. I won't force or pressure myself to do or say anything to anyone. I'll work through these things, but I don't want to push myself into doing anything I'm not ready or comfortable to do yet. Let me rephrase that. I'm not going to punish myself if I close up in a situation. I have no need or...
Thank you, Alexa.
God damn it. Shut up. Okay. I have no need or desire to drink at this point, but if shouting out to the world that I'm not a drinker causes me crushing anxiety, why do that to myself? It's my job to get through things.
I feel like that in particular kind of played into our whole discussion that's been underlying here about harm reduction, because it is kind of saying like, maybe I'm not doing this the ideal way that you would find in a book, but I'm doing it the best way for me.
Yes, exactly. Because like, if you do things in a way that makes you uncomfortable or that you're not ready to do, then it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And if you give yourself small goals, like that is way easier to maintain. And that in turn, like increases your ability to do more stuff.
Yes.
And it's just a slow, like, I don't think recovery as an end goal exists. I think you just keep practicing harm reduction and keep building on that until one day you're like, oh, okay, I'm doing pretty well. At least that's how it's always been for me when I found myself like in remission.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened over time by accident.
I feel like, yeah, you find yourself at a place where, like right now I'm at a place where I'm just like, I could live like this, but I really don't want to. It's more like you find yourself at a place where you might sit back and be like, okay, this is it. I actually am okay with living like this.
And like, I am okay living like this right now, even though I'm underemployed and I'm mentally ill and I'm still struggling with that and I don't really have a plan, like, that's okay with me. And that has been a really huge thing to accept.
It also makes me think of our last conversation about this, why I really hate the idea of therapy as worksheets.
Ooh.
Therapy as literal homework that you write down and do. I mean, I'm not going to say there's like no benefit to it. Sometimes maybe writing something down makes you aware. But
Well, there's a difference between filling out a therapy worksheet and journaling.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes they can be helpful, but
yeah,
everyone's different. That's the thing. Like Jess was saying at the very beginning, everyone is different. Acceptance and denial looks different for everybody. And so the first thing you need to accept is just like where you are.
Yeah, it's like I've never felt like I've solved or come to a acceptable space with a problem in my life because I've basically like done phonics worksheets.
Worksheets are so satisfying though.
Oh, they are for schoolwork because those always have right answers.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. It all comes down to binaries, black and white thinking, all or nothing.
But your mental health does not have a right answer.
No, in fact, maybe our mental health doesn't have an answer at all. All right, we need to wrap up. This was quite the conversation. I'll be thinking about it for a long time.
Oh, me too.
But yeah, we love you all. Thank you so much for participating. And if you didn't get to answer this time, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a new question for you.
And
next week.
I remember I'd always wanted to say for the past few weeks, because I've heard your end drop that you put in and that you give my personal Instagram.
Oh, I took it out on the last
I was gonna say, which is defunct. But I did start a brand new one, so now it's just Lauren2_AFH.
Do you want me to put that in the outro?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. We'll see you next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye. If you like what you heard, don't forget to tell a friend about our podcast. You can direct them to picklesandvodka.substack.com, where they can find our entire archive and also get access to our chat. We're on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast, Facebook.com/picklesandvodkapodcast, and YouTube.com/@picklesandvodkapodcast. My Instagram is @XtinaJumper and Lauren is @LaurenAFH. We'll see you next week.